The Supreme Court decision in Kennedy versus Bremerton School District eroded the separation of religion and state.
I don't agree with that at all. I think what it did was it gave an individual right to express a religious opinion in front of everybody.
The American Religious Town Hall meeting is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here is your host and moderator.
Welcome, viewers. Thank you so much for joining us to watch our program today. My name is Andrea Luxton. I am from Andrews University in Michigan, and I am today's moderator. I would like you now to meet our panelists for the day.
Hi, I'm Tom Plumley. I'm the senior minister at First Christian Church in Fort Worth, Texas. We're a part of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ.
Hi, my name is Dan Levin. I serve as senior rabbi at Temple Bethel in Boca Raton, Florida.
Hi, I'm Carl Troval. I'm professor of ethics and history at Concordia University in Austin, Texas.
And my name is Mel Robeck. I'm senior professor of church history and ecumenics and special assistant to the president for ecumenical relations at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California. I am also a minister with the Assemblies of God.
Thank you very much to our panelists. And now to today's interesting topic. On June 26, 2022, the Supreme Court rendered its decision in the case of a Washington coach who, after football games, knelt at the 50-yard line to pray. Soon enough, students and others joined him in prayer. It is true that he prayed on public school property, but he did not do so during any event sponsored by the school. It was not part of any school program, and he never told students to join him in prayer. He did not coerce anyone, in fact, to join him. The high school told him to stop praying after the games, and when he refused, they fired him. While the court determined that the coach's prayer was speech protected by the First Amendment, and the school had violated his First Amendment rights, critics have complained that the coach's actions did violate the separation of church and state. I would like our panelists to consider some of these questions. How do you understand the doctrine of the separation of church and state? In that context, number two, how do you view the action of the Supreme Court in this particular case? And finally, do you think the Supreme Court might have acted differently if the coach were, say, a Muslim? We're going to start our conversation by going back to the two individuals who started our program. Rabbi.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with everyone again today. And this particular Supreme Court decision for me was difficult and unfortunate. One of the great things for all of us as Americans is this amazing balance that is struck in the First Amendment between what we call the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. The Establishment Clause says that there will not be any coercion from the state regarding religious practice. There's not going to be an official religion for the United States of America, and everyone is going to have the freedom to practice their religion as they see fit. For people like me, who come from a religious minority, that protection, so that there is no state coercion, has really allowed the blossoming and the flowering of all the different manifestations of Jewish culture and expression more here in America perhaps than in any other place the Jewish people have ever been over the thousands of years of our wandering. Part of what also is beautiful about America is that we have the freedom to practice as we choose, and that the state can't interfere with that practice. And figuring out how you balance that, to me, is the number one question that we as Americans need to answer. One of the great, beautiful things about the way American democracy is constructed is this idea that you protect the rights of the minority from the hegemony of the majority. That just because the majority could do something, the law sort of restricts, and common decency restricts people from doing everything they possibly could. In fact, in many ways, that is the definition of morality itself. Just because I could do that, I'm going to restrain myself from doing that because it's not the right thing. So let's take the example of a football coach. And I disagree with some of the premises that were in your statement because if you're at a football game, that is a school-sponsored thing. And just because it was after the final whistle blew and the teams were dispersing, that's still a school-sponsored event. But even if it weren't a school-sponsored event, the number one thing that I hear from my colleagues who live in places that do not have large Jewish communities is how difficult it is for the young people in those communities to withstand the social pressures, to feel a sense of compulsion to participate in religious life that is not theirs. And the concern that, oh, if I don't go and pray at the 50-yard line after the game, even though I'm not Christian, I could lose playing time. I will be seen as less than in the coach's eyes. And even if it isn't on the 50-yard line after the game, but it's the prayer gathering for the barbecue after the game, if the Jewish kid doesn't show up, if the Muslim kid doesn't show up, if the Hindu kid says, I'm not going, then they're out. And there is a measure of social coercion, I think, that comes from that. And so I disagree with the Supreme Court's ruling because I think that it is coercive. And I think that even if the football coach, he's doing something performative. Why is he doing it on the 50-yard line? He's doing it on the 50-yard line not because he wants a moment of personal prayer. He could do that in front of his locker. He could do that in his office. He could do that in his car. He's doing that because he's bearing witness, because he wants kids to join him. He wants other athletes to join him. He wants to profess his faith in a way that hopefully will bring others to his faith, which is a beautiful, wonderful thing that he should do, just not as part of a school-sponsored event because of the coercive nature of what that means for other students. And now that this is the law of the land, even if you can do that, my fellow coaches and friends, please don't. It makes minority religious kids feel terribly uncomfortable and coerced.
Thank you. Dr. Robeck.
Yeah, Dan, there's much of what you said that with which I agree. I do agree that there is a kind of social coercion that goes on in some of these things. And quite frankly, I really have a lot of problems with praying about football games, for football games, after football games, and so forth, as though God were on some football team's side, picking a 50-yard line to say, well, we're not on either side, but on both sides. I do think that that's really important to recognize. At the same time, I have to say that there is no constitutional tradition that says there has to be separation of church and state. The only thing the Constitution and First Amendment say are the two issues that you said. Number one, there should be cannot be no establishment of a specific religion by the Congress, and religion should have the freedom to practice as they wish. Now, this particular individual doesn't represent necessarily a specific church or a specific religion. I presume he's a Christian bearing witness, just as you say, but at the same time, he has no institutional support that's saying you need to go out there and do this. I do think that there have been attempts by the Supreme Court in past years, especially I would say the past 60 years, where we've gotten used to kind of a liberal court that says we need to separate more, we need to confine religion over here and not have it in the public square in any place. And, we can see that on the public creches, public menorahs, the Ten Commandments in courts of law, those kinds of things. We've been abolishing those things like crazy because religion has no space in the public square. Where does that come from? It doesn't come from the Constitution, and it doesn't come from the First Amendment, where we have the freedom to express ourselves and so forth. So neither the Constitution nor the First Amendment mention the role of private citizens or the role of states. States have taken the same position that the Congress has, which is we're going to keep this separate. We're not going to establish religion. Anything that looks like that is open to potential lawsuits. We don't want to go through all of that. So it is a messy thing that when we talk about where does religion end and where does the secular state begin, because the state is secular, except every time a president or a governor or a mayor says, God bless America, every time. They do that all the time, thinking that perhaps that's the one religion thing that they can do or say, and I think that's only been really from the time of Eisenhower that kind of thing has been there. So my feeling is that what it did was it tried to balance the anti-religious sentiments that so many people are expressing in our secular society.
Thank you. Let's hear from our other two panelists.
I have a problem. I agree more with Dan, and this is why I think, Mel, it's because I think that it actually undermines. I assume this person's an evangelical Christian. I'm making an assumption there. This is an establishment of Christianity because this is and it's a very public one, and I also find it coercive, and I find that problematic. And I'm going to come at it at a different angle. I think it undermines the witness of Christians. Because what it does is it makes Christians look like these showy people who have to push their religion. I mean, and they have to use these events that are coercive on these poor kids. And that's what I find to be problematic. I mean, Jesus says, don't be hypocrites who pray on the street corners so that they may be seen by others. But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door. I mean, Jesus, as our Lord, says, do this in private and not in public like that. I think it undermines the Christian witness completely. And so that's, I think, where I have a problem. But I mean, I also think that it really is, this decision seriously weakens the Establishment Clause, which is problematic for me. I got more to say, but go ahead, Tom.
Well, I just want to say, I think there's some questions about the facts of the case. And also, I'm not sure that we've hit upon what exactly the issue was. Facts of the case are that, yes, this is an evangelical Christian assistant coach, part-time, who at the end of the football game would go and pray. He has every right to do that. And he has every right to do it at the 50-yard line. The problem came when the kids saw that he was doing that, went out there and wanted to join. Videos were taken of some of that, of kids being very demonstrative of their belief in Jesus and of Jesus, Jesus's name being raised. At that point, the teacher, the coach, the representative of the public school had the responsibility to say, this is not appropriate. We're going to move this somewhere else so that we're not coercing other kids. And the issue in the case was whether the school district could find that the coach's actions were coercive. And they did find that. And the Supreme Court, in its decision, basically said they could not find that. It was irresponsible, and they were required to allow him to lead prayers if he chose to do so in that public space. Was it coercion? Well, the school district determined that his behavior was coercive, and I think they had every reason to make that determination because the parents of the kids that were also on the team were telling the school district that yes, their kid felt coerced at some level to go out there and be a part of the crowd, to be a part of the group that was praying. Therefore, the decision of the court plainly went against overwhelming precedents that have been established over long periods of time that school officials leading prayers violates the Establishment Clause. And I think that's where I come down on this.
I just wanted to add one, because as you were talking, Tom, I found this quote. It was very Justice Alito actually said in this case to forget about all the complicated facts in this case. We're going after this principle. And I'm thinking, I thought law was judging a very specific case for a specific point. I mean, that was one of the most disturbing lines I've seen in a long time. Anyway, all right.
Well, I think, in response to some of the things that you said, Mel, I think that you can be very much pro-religion and not pro-prayer in school. And I think that there can be a line. So, for example, in my community, there is sort of this area right in the downtown area, like a common green, for example. And there are all kinds of religious displays that are put up there at holiday time and at other kinds, and I love that. I love to see public displays of people's love for their religion. I love when there's a creche in front of a church that everyone gets to see when they're driving by. It makes me feel so excited to see my neighbors put creches in front of their home, or when friends of mine celebrate, invite the community to come to an iftar dinner for a Muslim during Ramadan. We should share the joy and the beauty of our religious traditions. The question is, if I do it on my turf, I'm welcoming people in if they choose to come.
Right.
And if you do it on school property by a person who's wearing a uniform paid for the school, then you start entering into a space that I think ends up more coercive. And I think that part of what I think actually, I'm sensitive a little bit to what Carl shared. I think actually part of what diminishes the love, and I spent a lot of time with teenagers, for religion among young people is the coercive nature of what religion is often seen to be in other venues.
Yeah, I've worked against the coercion about religion, things like proselytism, of stealing people from other people's churches, or even, coercing people of other faith to become Christian. I'm very much opposed to that. The difference here, I think, what I thought I heard you say, Tom, was that he prayed, and the students were the ones that were actually doing the coercion. That's what I heard. The students, they're looking at others and saying, hey, you got to come with me, and that's a different kind of a thing. That's where the court has already said students have the right to lead in prayer. They have the freedom to do that, even on school grounds. So I think this is a very complex thing. I totally agree that coercion should not be part of anything that has to do with the church and the state. But I do believe that religious freedom must extend to the ability of a coach to pray anywhere he wants to. We don't condemn students or even teachers from praying in the classroom, as long as it's silent. I don't want other non-Christians leading us in prayer in schools. I'm not for public prayer in school. But I do think that we have crossed a line in the past that basically says no faith as long as you're in the public square.
I don't know. I think that saying "God bless you" and "God bless America," as much as that the phrase kind of
it's
turns
just a phrase,
my stomach,
I
think that that's a part of. We have an American civil religion that allows the expression of faith in all these circumstances. I just don't see that it's being eliminated. We have prayers at Memorial Day events. We have prayers at. And we have prayers in Congress. We have prayer. There are all of these examples and chaplains, but there's also a diversity. This is a really interesting question about if there's a let's bring all the prayer mats out and have all the kids. This is. Would we have the same decision? I don't know.
All right, we are going to be moving in a moment towards the break. From my perspective as an educator, this is just a fascinating conversation. This whole question about what becomes coercive in that kind of environment. What responsibility do you have as an administrator towards all of the students? for safety, for feeling this is a safe place for themselves. But let's have a break and we'll come back to our closing comments.
We hope you're enjoying today's program. If you'd like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the vision and history of the program, and we invite you to become a ministry partner, explore our Town Hall Estates healthcare facilities, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, we look forward to receiving your letters. You may write us at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. If you have a prayer request, please send it to prayerrequest@americanreligious.org. Thank you for writing and thank you for watching. Now, back to today's closing statements.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope that you've enjoyed our program so far, and our panelists have done a great job of showing us that this is not a simple issue. And we're moving now to our closing statements.
Thank you. I believe that the coach in this case had the freedom to pray, and he had the freedom to pray in a public way. But at the point where this prayer event that he started became an evangelistic event, he had a responsibility to back away from that. If the kids were going to continue it, fine. But for the coach to continue to be at the center of it, leading it, which is what happened, the school district had every right to determine, based on the testimony of parents to them about what happened to their kids, that this was a coercive event, and they had the right to take the steps to fall in line with the with saying that what he was doing was violating the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment.
I'm a religious person. I'm a scholar of religion, and I'm really comfortable with religious expression, even in public. And I support rituals of civil religion that remind us of that there are people who believe in God, and I think those are important expressions. However, when these expressions become coercive in this particular way, in this particular case, I feel like it's pushing a very specific Christianity upon other people in a coercive way. I find that to be, and because it's a public school teacher who represents that, and it's done on public in school uniforms. I think that this is coercive, and I think I said at the very beginning, I think the other thing that disturbs me is I think it's actually undermining of the Christian faith to put this public piety out on display for everyone to see like that. It undermines the humility of Christ and Christ's people.
I agree that there's what I would call a lack of wisdom on the part of the coach. For one thing, I think prayer is trivialized when we spend time praying for teams winning or losing in a football game or any other kind of a game. I think that's really kind of demeaning to what the reality of prayer is all about, which is a communication with God that's important. Like Tom, I agree that the coach had the right to pray. He was a private citizen who could do that. You could call him an employee of the school at that point. However, the game had ended. The whistle had been blown. So even though it was on school property, nobody has ever said you can't pray on school property. Lots of schools rent their space out to churches to allow them, or religious organizations to allow them to worship there. So, you know, what I'm most concerned about is the fact that we have gotten so used to a court that has ruled in the other direction that when we get a ruling like this, everybody is so tuned to the other direction that they forget that there is supposed to be a balance between the two. And I think what this did was it slightly restored the balance for people who typically have been ignored by the court for the last 60 years.
So it's an interesting discussion, as it always is each week, and I'm so blessed to be part of these conversations. To me, what's challenging about this individual case is the selfish nature of what the coach was doing. I played team sports forever. I was on my track and cross country team, my swim team, played soccer for years. And part of the joy of being part of a team is when you feel like you're part of the team, that you're creating, it's actually a very spiritual and holy thing because you're creating a oneness, right? And in our tradition, that creation of a oneness is kind of like how you create a connection between a God who is one with people who are many. And when you can take that people who are many and make them one, that's part of the spiritual power of team sports. So when you have a coach, a leader, a role model, who at the end of something that is supposed to bring a group of people together and then does something that is patently divisive, to me, it's not just bad wisdom, it's coercive. Because I know from all the years that I played, I wanted my coach to like me. I wanted my coach to think I was a strong leader on that team. I wanted the coach to think that I should be, promoted on my team. And so because of that, I wanted to please the coach. And so now imagine you're in the cleats of a Muslim football player or a Jewish football player or some other religion, right? And now I've got to say, well, do I sacrifice my religious beliefs so I can be part of my team, or do I feel cast out because I'm not with everybody else? And to me, that's the coercive nature of what the school district there was trying to avoid.
What an excellent conversation about a lot of good things. The Charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators and others may appear on this program and can declare their beliefs without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America we believe in civil and religious freedom, not only in theory, but in reality. So now, friends, until next week at the same time and over the very same channel, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of you bless all of us.